It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Open the fucking straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll live in hell. Signed off as all praise to Allah. That's the Truth Social message posted earlier today by the President of the United States of America from the White House in Pennsylvania Avenue. It's enough to make you hear the flap of white coats, and they're sending rescuers to rescue the rescuer. Soon they'll be sending men to guard the graves of the men who died there before. And happy Easter to you too, from the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. I apologize for the profanity, especially to my mother. On Easter Sunday, I wouldn't normally talk like that, or in public, on air, talk like that at all. But that did not stop the President of the United States of America from issuing that message in print above his name in the White House rubric. There it is there on the screen, if you find it difficult to believe me. Who was it that allowed Donald Trump to send that message? Who was it that didn't feel wise enough or strong enough to try to stop him? Who was it that felt that on Easter Sunday, issuing a call for all praise to Allah might be offensive to some? Who was it in the White House who thought that it could be lawful, even in the wilder shores of the American injustice system, to threaten literal war crimes, literally in writing, above your own name? Who was it that thought that Donald Trump continues to be fit and proper to discharge his duties as the man in charge of the nuclear football which could bring life on Earth finally to an end? It doesn't get much more serious than that, and we'll come back both in my monologue and in the excellent interview, I promise you, with Larry Johnson, formerly of the State Department, formerly of the CIA, if you can ever be formerly part of the CIA. Larry knows what's what, and you are going to benefit from it in just a few minutes' time. But let me go to the events of last night. Good taste prevents me, or at least prevented my editor, from showing the photograph which has emerged of the blackened, burned skull of an American airman. That's the American airman they claimed that they rescued. This was found amongst all the wreckage on the plane near Isfahan that they said was the wreckage of aircraft that they themselves had blown up because it had got stuck in the sand. Those are Black Hawks down. Those are C-120 transport aircraft, though why you would fly in a huge transport aircraft to rescue a lone pilot is beyond me, but it won't be beyond Larry Johnson, that I can assure you. This has all the hallmarks of the ill-fated disaster, electoral as well as human, that afflicted President Jimmy Carter in the dog days of his ill-fated presidency, when he mounted a rescue attempt in the Iranian desert, something similar. He didn't know that the Iranians were working with the incoming president, as it turned out, President Ronald Reagan, for an October surprise. They were unaware of the fact that Ronald Reagan would be even worse than Jimmy Carter. As many are now saying, they were unaware that Donald Trump's cognitive decline doesn't just match the cognitive decline of his immediate predecessor. And bear in mind, in the 21st century, we've also had the inches from imbecility George W. Bush. George W. Bush, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, all in the first quarter of the 21st century, surely tells us something about the decline of the United States of America. Nobody could quite have guessed that Easter Sunday would have been marked, would have been scarred by the President of the United States, who's always telling us what a holy Joe he is, but only these days. He used to boast of being an atheist. He has no known church affiliation. Watching him and Melania standing in an empty church the other day, well, it just looked jarringly off. But he has persuaded the evangelicals to the extent that support for Donald Trump's policy towards Israel is now stronger amongst American evangelical Christians than it is amongst American Jews. The Jews have far more sense. They can see what the American evangelicals cannot, that Donald Trump is destroying his presidency. He's destroying his MAGA movement. He's destroying everything he ever said he stood for about making America great again, about putting America first. He's ushering in a new era of Democratic Party rule. Yes, that's right, unfortunately. He has achieved the most amazing resurrection of them all, at least in the last 2,000 years. The resurrection of Kamala Harris, who now looks and sounds perfectly sane compared to the man who defenestrated her just over a year ago. Donald Trump will not resurrect the fortunes of the Republican Party. They are as dead as the dodo, which existed sometime after the Stone Age, President Trump. The Stone Age in which Iran's vast 6,000-year civilization was already resplendent when your people and mine were swinging in the trees. The misunderestimation of Iran, as George W. Bush would put it, has been profound and fatal for the American empire. I've lived a long life, a long political life, and so there is nothing that I forget. I don't forget the helicopters clattering off the roof in what was then called Saigon, in the ultimate emblem, icon of the defeat of the American empire in Southeast Asia. And hallelujah, I have lived long enough to see the end of the American empire in the Persian Gulf. When this war began, 6 weeks nearly ago, the Islamic Republic of Iran was ringed by American bases. Now there are none. Not a single American military base remains extant in the Persian Gulf. That means they're having to come from a long way away to deal their death and destruction on the schoolgirls, their mothers, their teachers, and the educational workers and healthcare workers and ordinary factory workers that they have massacred in their thousands to date. That long way away is precisely my country. The vast majority of American bombing raids in the last 2 weeks have set off from England's green and pleasant land. And so not only has Donald Trump destroyed his presidency for Israel, Keir Starmer has again destroyed his premiership for Israel. And if he's not yet aware of it, it's only a few weeks now until the local elections drive the nails into the political coffin of Keir Starmer. And if the lid doesn't quite shut later this month, the trial of the Romanian rent boys, the Ukrainian rent boys, some of them with Romanian citizenship, but all of them born within the borders of what is now Ukraine, they are on trial having pled not guilty to the allegations made by the Crown that they arsoned the front door and the former house and the former motor car of the British Prime Minister. I have to be careful for legal reasons. The trial is imminent. So let me just say I and millions of others will be watching that trial very carefully indeed to see just what it was that these Ukrainian rent boys had against the current British Prime Minister. What it was, what gripe, what grudge they could possibly have developed against him if these allegations are true. And the men deny them, and they're entitled to a fair trial. Britain is on trial throughout the whole theatre. The Lebanese resistance just fired a missile at a Royal Navy warship off the coast of Lebanon, and they hit it. It has been damaged. How severely, we don't yet know. Neither do we know why the Royal Navy had a warship off the coast of Lebanon, whilst an Israeli invasion of Lebanon is yet again ongoing. We don't know if they were there to pick up, radical clerics that had fled there, as they have done in the past. Maybe they were on a humanitarian mission, although the kind of warship it appears to have been probably mitigates against that. We don't know if they were spotting for the Israeli murderers, as they did throughout the conflict in Gaza, which killed and maimed hundreds of thousands of refugees in the teeming refugee camps of Gaza. We don't know because they won't tell us. They won't tell us why they were off the coast of Lebanon. They didn't tell us why they were setting off from the sovereign base in Cyprus just at the time that Israel was mercilessly bombarding women and children, including latterly in their tents. That's the kind of democracy that my country has now become. We'll give you more on the developing situation of the Royal Navy ship struck by Hezbollah off the coast of Lebanon in the last hour. I can say no more about it, for that would be a criminal offence in Britain. That's the kind of democracy that my country has become. But what of the democracy of the United States of America? How much longer are you going to put up with this farce? your president, in foul, profane, vulgar, but properly typed, punctuated, and spelt, unusually, in his Truth Social post this morning, didn't just invoke the name of Allah on Easter Sunday. He didn't just curse and swear on Easter Sunday, to the discomfiture of no Christian evangelical that I have yet seen reported. He threatened war crimes, but worse than war crimes, if there can be such a thing. They were war blunders. He said that on Tuesday he was going to destroy all of Iran's power plants, which is, of course, a war crime, explicitly delineated as such by international law, by the laws of war, and by the Geneva Conventions. But it's worse than a crime. It's a blunder. Because the only possible outcome could be that Iran will destroy the power plants of every single one, bar Qatar, which has seen sense and ordered American forces off of its land, but every other one that is still harboring American weapons, American men, and American warplanes and missiles, every other Arab Gulf country will then have its power plants destroyed. And if the damage Iran sustains is serious enough, their desalination plants also in countries that depend on desalination for up to 95% of their water. What did these slave satraps do to deserve this hatred from your president? They have invested, according to Trump, we never actually get to see the money, like the money of the Board of Peace, $1.25 billion of which was transferred this day from the American Treasury to an account in Qatar in Donald Trump's personal name. Are you idiots, you Americans? I mean, how stupid can you be? He's been grifting all of his life, but now he's just taking it. But according to Trump, they've invested trillions of dollars in your economy. According to Trump, they gave him diamonds and pearls. We saw the 747 aircraft that he left his recent trip to the Gulf on. Gifted, he clearly told us, not to the United States, but to him personally. These countries have not just not received the protection that they were paying in the protection racket for. They are now about to be obliterated. Life, human life, even the life of the camels of the Arabian Gulf is about to be brought to an end by the destruction of the civilian infrastructure promised by Donald Trump in that Truth Social post on Easter Sunday. But then there won't be much point in human life in the Arabian Gulf. In fact, there won't be any human life in the Arabian Gulf. Once there's no desalinated water, there will be a mass outflow, not just of rich Arabs, but of the millions of Asian workers, semi-slaves in some cases, who wait on them hand and foot. Where do you think they're going, Mr. Europe? Where do you think they're headed, Mr. Farage? You half-wits. But there won't be any point anyway, whether you've got enough bottled water to last you a month or 6 months. Because Israel has repeatedly bombed the nuclear power plant in Iran, which Russia has just evacuated all of its personnel from. So dangerous has the situation become that a radiation emergency is virtually inevitable. Time after time, crazed, unhinged, Israel has been bombing a nuclear reactor. And it's to Israel I now turn. This is 2026, not 1926. By imposing the most condign regime of sanctions and penalties on anyone releasing video and pictures of the punishment now being suffered every single day and every single night. The nighttime pictures are more spectacular, but the daytime punishment is just as severe. Israel is a country of 9 million people, 1 million of whom have already gone back to the countries they hold passports from. The rest would go back if they could. Scores of thousands have fled to Cyprus with every intention of setting up home there. 300,000 are headed for Patagonia, which had been helpfully set on fire in raging forest fires, reducing the value of the land somewhat. Milei, the president of Argentina, his real name is Mileikowski. He said he converted to Judaism, but in fact, it's Judaism from which he came. And he has set in motion a process where 300,000 Israelis will become citizens of Patagonia. A new PLO may very well emerge. As a matter of fact, scholars will know that Israel was very nearly in Patagonia in the first place, instead of in the Holy Land. Milei is going to take 300,000. Greece and the Greek islands the Israelis are trying to buy. Cyprus, where they're just landing on the beach like refugees, will soon be one of an archipelago of little Israels. Israel is a country that was 9 million people, but is rapidly declining. And no amount of censorship can disguise the incredible damage that is being done to Tel Aviv, to Haifa, to the oil storage, to the military industrial complex, to the military intelligence industrial complex, to factories, to the very means of the life that the Israeli people have been able to enjoy. And so, Donald Trump is decolonizing Palestine. I'm beginning to wonder whether he's a secret agent on our side. Certainly, if I'd been advising him to do the maximum damage to the power of the American empire, I'd have advised him to do exactly what he has been doing in your name, on your dime, with quite a few $1 billion in the back pocket of him, his family, and his friends. Larry Johnson's coming up next. He knows everything about war and the politics of it. Stay tuned. A big thanks to the people who support me on the Patreon page. I really have come to depend on the income from that. It costs £1 a week, not even the price of a cup of coffee in an insalubrious cafe. If you think you could stretch to that, please support me on Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. Now, the Moats team have added a tiered system on my Patreon page where you can become an official Moats graduate. How about that? I speak as someone who graduated from nowhere, from the factory floor in Michelin. But you can become a Moats graduate and legend. You can give a regular donation to support the show and my work. You can now upgrade from a mere Patreon to a MOATS graduate at £10 a month as opposed to £5 a month, I think it is. And you can receive official MOATS legend status for £20.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
"45,000 people have voted on the poll already, and I'm only just announcing it. Have Trump and Netanyahu killed international law? Duh. Is the Pope a Catholic? Do bears defecate in the woods? Did international law exist in the first place? These are all highly debatable points, but the question chosen for the evening: have Trump and Netanyahu killed international law? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You should follow me on there. It's my redoubt of almost last resort. You can vote on my X. You can vote on the YouTube community poll. You can vote on the YouTube stream, but only if you agree to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I must get to 1 million subscribers pretty damned quick. If you want to call the show, it's toll free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. Hit the phones, Jack and Jacqueline. Larry C. Johnson, veteran of the CIA and the State Department's Office of Counterterrorism and founder of the highly respected Berg Associates, I'm glad to say, joins us now. Larry, you were my go-to on this auspicious occasion because I'd like to dive down deep into the war itself, and I knew you'd have a point of view about what we are told, at least we will be told on Netflix when the movie gets made, happened in the Iranian desert last night. In my monologue, I poured some cold water, no pun intended, on the United States version of events. What's your understanding of what happened when the rescuers flew out to save a lone pilot?
Yeah, you were correct, and it's good to be with you, George. And being with a friend is always a pleasant way to spend a Sunday afternoon. Look, the story we've been given, it's a lie on several fronts. What that F-15 was doing up in that area, what was its mission? I think it was involved in preparation for a ground attack on the Natanz nuclear reactor, and when the plane went down, the number of assets that one of the pilots was picked up immediately, but the other one they couldn't find him. There's now information online, which I've been assured is accurate, that this pilot was he apparently hit the ground 5 miles north and west of the point where he was rescued, and he basically did escape and evasion to get to the top of that mountain to be exfilled. Now here's where it really gets strange and doesn't the explanations don't make sense. At that site there were 2 C-130 aircraft. Those are fixed-wing aircraft with 4 propellers. The Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, they have a special version of that plane which is sort of souped up. And then there are also 4 MH-6 Little Birds. Now these are small helicopters. If anybody's ever seen the movie Black Hawk Down, those little helicopters that come in to try to rescue the people that crashed in the Black Hawk, that's a little bird. Or the little birds that run strafing rounds. They can carry, I think, a maximum of 4 special operations forces, either Delta Force or SEAL Team 6, one of the two. But here's the key point. They only have a combat range of about 300 miles. Now, if you fly from Kuwait to this location in Isfahan, that's 250 miles. How the hell do you get back from there? Well, that explains why at least one of those C-130s was on the ground. They can carry a fuel bladder of gasoline or aviation fuel. They can refuel these aircraft. And then, but it's not clear if the other C-130 was there as well on that mission. It said that both got stuck in the sand, but some of the pictures that have come out and some of the video at least appears to show one of those in flame crashing into the desert. So I don't think we have an accurate count. What we do know is that in addition to losing the F-15, we lost an additional 2 Black Hawk helicopters. They're called Pave Hawks. We lost at least, got the 2 C-130s that were gone. Now we've got an additional 4 MH-6 Little Birds, and I think the reason they left them there, they didn't have enough fuel to get them back to safety. An A-10 Warthog went down, a fixed-wing aircraft. So when you total it up, you're looking at about $400 million worth of aircraft that got shot down yesterday, just ostensibly to save one person. And can't emphasize enough that this may very well have been in preparation. If this hadn't all fallen apart on Friday, during Friday, it's very likely we might have seen troops on the ground already trying to conduct a special operation against the nuclear facility at Natanz. Now that may be delayed. I think Trump, in his insanity, we had the movie about the madness of King George from the American Revolution. Well, we can update that part 2 with the madness of Donald Trump. I mean, he has literally, the liver has slipped off the sausage there, or off the cracker. It's just no longer intact. But he's going to probably order a ground operation, and now it's up to the military chain of command to decide: are we going to follow this order? Is this a lawful order, or are we going to resign in protest? Because anything else at this point is going to result in more American casualties. And the claim that they just rescued this one pilot, again, here's what doesn't make sense. Why didn't they just send in the one Black Hawk to grab this guy off the mountain? If he's up on the mountaintop, you can hover, lower a PJ, the rescuer from the Air Force, and haul him up into the bird. But no, they had to send out 4 Little Birds, which means there must have been some sort of firefight, and we have no information actually about the number of actual casualties that were caused. So it's just, go get yourself a big bucket of cold water and keep pouring.
So from just counting up in my head from what you said there, the United States lost multiple aircraft. They must have lost multiple men, killed and wounded. I've decided not to show the picture of the skull that I've got on my telephone now, but at least one of these United States airmen is very definitely dead in the debris of that aircraft. So multiple aircraft, multiple casualties, hundreds of millions of dollars. In your experience, is that the kind of decision that would be made by the military brass? I mean, in terms of cost effectiveness, losing several men in order to rescue one man, never mind the materiel, would seem to me an odd decision, especially as the Iranians will, I would have thought, certainly treat their prisoners of war rather better than we've been treating ours in recent wars.
Yeah. Well, the CSAR, CSAR stands for Combat Search and Rescue. CSAR has been part of Air Force operations going back well before Vietnam. I have a good friend who was a CSAR pilot in Vietnam from 1968 on. And these missions have always been extremely risky because and they learned during Vietnam, they would fly out to try to save one pilot. And more often than not, these rescue teams, which could be comprised of 2 to 3 different types of aircraft, including helicopters, they'd get shot down, and then you'd have a bunch of crewmen dead, just as happened here. So that is built into the plan. Whatever the plan was, they have whole orders involving combat search and rescue, who's going to do what and under what conditions. And so that whole operation kicked into high gear once that F-15 went down. But again, you come back to saying that this came less than 24 hours, 36 hours after Donald Trump had said that there was no more air defense in Iran. Well, that didn't age too well. And the Iranians, it turns out, have a loitering system, a rocket that actually acts like a glider, just sort of hangs out in the sky until it hones in on something, and then boom, can hit it. And we don't have a good counter to that, at least not yet. So the odds are that if the United States proceeds with trying to launch a larger ground operation, see, one of the things, there's a limit how far we can penetrate inland, as was evidenced by the 2 C-130s here. I have to assume they were there carrying fuel, not personnel. The fuel was to get the helicopters with enough gas to get back home. But there's always a problem in the desert. We saw that with the Operation Eagle Claw back in what was that, May of 1980 or the fall of 1980, where they tried to rescue the hostages that were being held by students in Tehran. There you had a helicopter and a C-130 crash and it killed eight people, 2 on the helicopter and 6 inside the C-130. And in that case, they left the bodies behind, which, from the photograph you're describing, it sounds like they've done that again. So yeah, we're getting a lot of happy talk surrounding this without actually knowing what was the case. But the distance that these aircraft can travel, you have to factor that in because they don't have unlimited range.
No, and we'll come back to where they must have flown from in a minute, because that may become exceptionally important, namely Kuwait. But I was going to press the point that you yourself made there, that Donald Trump told us, in fact, he told us the first weekend, but he's been telling us ever since. And 2 days ago he told us, we're flying over Tehran, they're not even shooting at us. Isn't there a limit to even the most credulous American media that they keep accepting and regurgitating what is clearly a blatant lie?
Well, no, you're old enough. We're roughly the same age. We remember Vietnam and all the lies told back then, and it took a while. For a while, the press was out there happily reporting, "Oh, we're winning. There's the accomplishments," and then, once finally Walter Cronkite went, "No, we're not getting the truth." Then the worm turned. We're still in that celebratory, euphoric moment with respect to military operations, where people are waving the red, white, and blue, and they're cheering, and this is a great effort. Some of the social media commentary on it is just it would induce diabetes in people. It's so treacly, so sickly sweet, but they want to celebrate this for right now. Like here's one example. This one person wrote, "This is worth every friggin' penny." We burned down hardware to bring an American home and deny the mullahs a propaganda trophy. A captured U.S. weapons system officer would have been paraded on TV, tortured, exploited for intel, used for humiliation theater. Instead, our guys flew into hell, got him out. You know, that kind of thing. It's just, it's ridiculous. And there will be more casualties. We can be assured of that.
Well, let's turn to that, because a 69-year-old sexual predator woke up on Easter Sunday morning and tweeted the now infamous message filled with cursing and swearing and all praise to Allah. But amongst the thicket was a very clear threat, in his own words, written, typed by him, to commit multiple war crimes, which can only be a boomerang on America's closest allies in the Gulf. What's behind that message? I mean, if I didn't know that he doesn't drink, I would have said this was a message written by a man who's roaring drunk.
Yeah. No, yeah, I tell you what. Even among the MAGA crowd, you know, the people who've been the most loyal to Donald Trump, they're even shaking their head going, what in the name of God is this all about? This is crazy talk. This is not the talk of this like a Captain Queeg moment from the Caine Mutiny, except with shouting and yelling, because you know you always look to a leader in the midst of a crisis to show some sort of calmness, some sort of firm determination. Instead, this comes across like a panicked schoolgirl, screaming, the expletive, the popular F word that he used to describe telling Iran to open the strait, and then accusing them of being crazy. It's like, dude, there's this concept in psychology and psychiatry called projection. You're laying on to the Iranians the very thing that afflicts you. Look in the mirror. People are very much, I'm friends with Jeffrey Wernick. He owns, he's the owner of BitChute, one of the social media platforms out there, where you can post videos. And he went on, he made an extended video today, calling for the 25th Amendment to be invoked, that Donald Trump ought to be walked out of the White House wearing a nice white jacket that with the sleeves tied behind his back, and then taken to a nice facility, given some pudding, and allowed to watch TV. But as far as lead the United States and have his hand on the nuclear button, I can imagine even Putin and Xi Jinping are just, their jaws have had to drop. I don't even think they ever anticipated that Trump could be this crazy. And now you have to really begin asking those serious questions of, is the United States in the control of a madman who might use nuclear weapons? And you have to say yes.
Well, if the military went along with it, Larry, and in the week we saw a parade of generals and admirals packing their briefcases and walking out of the Pentagon, some of them resigning, others sacked by the equally stir-crazy Defense Secretary, or rather, Secretary for War. What was all that about?
Well, none of the people that were removed, General Randy George, this other General Hodney, and then the chaplain, I'm not even sure what that was about. None of them are in the chain of command where they are issuing orders or mobilizing troops that are going to be used or already deployed to the theater there for offensive operations against Iran. They are, let's call them, they're in the admin chain. They were dealing with more, longer term administrative issues. Now, that said, they very well could have spoken up and said that this war is wrong. But I think what Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth are doing is they are creating their own Praetorian Guard. This didn't start with Trump. It actually started in earnest under Obama, where Obama began putting people into positions of leadership that were loyal to him, not loyal to the Constitution, but loyal to him personally. And then Biden did that, and Trump has done that. So, and I'm not trying to, it's not just Trump. This has been bipartisan corruption and politicization of the U.S. military. But that's what's afoot right now. Trump is in the process of trying to create his own Praetorian Guard. But there are also, it's incumbent upon the officers who, let's face it, many of them are overly political. They get their finger in the wind because they want to get promoted, and they'll do what they have to get promoted. But we really need people who are committed to the Constitution, because the oath they swore was to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution. Not Donald Trump, not J.D. Vance, not Joe Biden, it was to uphold and defend the Constitution. So it takes it out of that personality, and yet this kind of action sends waves down through the ranks that, hey, if you want to get promoted, if you want to stay in here and finish your career, better shut up and go along. And I'm afraid that's what's happening right now.
Now, that's not reassuring because it removes the possibility that the military brass will push back. What about the politicians? Sherlock Holmes would put it, what about the dog that isn't barking? J.D. Vance, I haven't seen or heard of him for days. He is bound to realize that on current plans, the Republican Party have the life chances of a Black Hawk in the Iranian desert come the midterms and come the next presidential election. Might he be contemplating some kind of action, do you think?
Well, I think he's limited to what he can do. I do know from someone who is close to him, and that he was described as almost clinically depressed right now, because he recognized what an awful situation that we're in, and the rumors are flying that Trump is reportedly going to also press for the resignation of Daniel Driscoll, who is the Secretary of the Army. That would be relevant because Driscoll was a law school classmate of J.D. Vance. Driscoll was a combat veteran from the war in Afghanistan. And Driscoll reportedly is very disturbed by Trump's insistence upon going forward with this, reckless military, this reckless war against Iran. So, there's more chaos to come. I had predicted a couple of weeks ago that I expected Tulsi Gabbard to be made the scapegoat, not because she did anything wrong, just because she will. Here she is being unduly loyal to Donald Trump, and when Joe Kent, her deputy, basically when he resigned, she should have followed him out the door. Instead, she stuck around to make excuses for Donald Trump's inexcusable conduct, inexcusable policy decisions. Because he lied and has continued to lie about Iran presenting a threat to the United States. It did not. And yet, as a result of that, the United States did the equivalent of what the Nazis did on September 1st, 1939, launching an unprovoked war of aggression.
Let's turn to the military parts of what we'll call the Easter message, the Easter homily of Donald Trump. What he threatened wasn't just a crime; it's a blunder, surely, because if he carries it out, the immediate retaliation on all of his allies, with the exception perhaps of Qatar, which has now begun the process of removing American military force from its land, but all the others. If the power goes out, if the lights go out in Iran, they go out everywhere in the Gulf, don't they?
Yes. Yeah, this is the part of the war that I think most people don't appreciate or comprehend. And I'm not sure Iran envisioned this at the outset, but I think they've rapidly caught on that this is where the real power lies. By controlling the Strait of Hormuz, they now control the price of oil in the world, at least indirectly. They control the flow of oil, but not just that, but by controlling the flow of liquid natural gas and fertilizer, all of a sudden Iran has become the preeminent economic power broker in the world. And while there's a lot of cheap talk about opening the Strait of Hormuz with military force, the fact of the matter is that to do that would be an extremely costly, lengthy military exercise that would stretch a year or two in order to actually try to carry it out. Because it's not just about securing the immediate area there in the strait. It is about making sure that there are no more missiles or drones that Iran could launch from hidden locations in the mountains that stretch 200 miles deep. And they certainly have missiles that can travel that far. So by controlling this oil, the world right now is in recession. It's just the economists haven't gotten together because their definition is you got to have 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth. Then that's a recession. We're already there. It's just going to take them a while to get together to make the academic claim. What really is unknown is how deep will the recession be? Will it go into depression territory, which means a greater than 10% decline in economic activity? But we're already seeing some seismic shifts in how the world economy is starting to get restructured. Iran, if you want to get your oil out of the Persian Gulf, great. You got to pay a fee. That fee goes to China. You're paying via yuan. You're going to pay for the oil via yuan. Deutsche Bank has just opened and started offering Chinese bonds. They're called panda bonds, which is and they're being snapped up by investors. Because now, unlike in the past crises, where the U.S. dollar was seen as a safe haven resort, no, it's now China. So China's getting that, and as this filters through the airline industry, that's another sector taking a major blow because the price of aviation fuel has basically tripled. That's having to be rationed already in Italy. That only for information that goes out for flights for longer than 3 hours, they get priority, as do medical flights. So it is, plus with the restrictions that the Europeans self-imposed sanctions against Russia, they can no longer fly across Russia. And now with the Middle East blowing up, how do you fly to Asia? Whereas the Chinese, they got direct flights all the way to Europe, and they get to fly across Russia. So right there's a decided advantage to China on that front. Then the West is dependent upon rare earth minerals for producing many of the weapon systems that it wants to produce to go attack China with. So, it's a pretty ugly picture right now for the United States and Europe.
It sure is, Larry. Let's take a quick break, and you've kindly agreed to stay on just a little bit. I know you have many
Sure.
other pressing priorities, but there's a whole lot of people would like to ask you questions rather than me, and you're far more qualified to answer them. So, with your permission, I'll take a quick break now, and then John in Florida, Sam in Pennsylvania. Stay tuned. I don't believe that the mainland European countries give a toss about Britain, and I'm certain that the United States would not sacrifice itself for Britain. That's why I say Britain is completely marginalized. As for the Trident missiles, of course, if the United States, which has dual control over these missiles, gave permission for them to be launched, Of course, they would incinerate Russian cities. But what good would that do us? Because we'd all be dead, including the people that fired the missiles. You feel me?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's take questions. John in Florida has a question for Larry. Go ahead, John.
Thanks for taking my call, George. Happy Easter to you and your family, and Larry also.
And to you, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. I don't want to be hawkish and take a lot of time, but I have a few questions. Larry, my first question is, isn't J.D. Vance's career will be over unless he invokes the 25th Amendment of the United States? That would be one.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, if he wants a career, I think
let's
this
take
is
that
it.
one.
He either makes a move or not.
Yeah, let's take that one, John, because Larry's under time pressure. It's a very good question. Larry.
No, I think his career will be over, and his only salvation will be if Trump is either ousted via the 25th Amendment or removed because of health reasons.
And he's only 41 years old. It's pretty early to commit political suicide.
Yeah.
Really is.
He's,
let's go to Sam in Pennsylvania. Sam in Pennsylvania has a question for Larry. On you go, Sam.
Gentlemen, thank you, and happy Easter. Listen, Larry, what do you think of this conspiracy theory? They're deliberately inciting Iran to do the destruction in the Gulf. They can make the entire Gulf region uninhabitable. They can cut off huge amounts of energy, which will kill huge amounts of people around the world, not the fertilizers, the energy, the other resources. All of the resources stay in the ground for a clique of people who are obviously looking at creating a world run by AI and robots that can build robots. They won't be affected by any of this. Mark Zuckerberg isn't going to have any problems putting jet fuel in his private jet. Neither will Bezos or the rest of them who are all participating in murdering people by allowing the U.S. government to use their artificial intelligence. And essentially, whether my conspiracy theory is correct or not, if they keep inciting Iran and Iran blows up those oil and gas fields, yeah, that oil will stay there. It can be retrieved later. The gas will stay there. It can be retrieved later. But they're accomplishing a goal which has been discussed by the Davos crowd for a long time. As Jeffrey Epstein postured in one of his emails to somebody, what about that question of getting rid of all these poor people? And it appears that they're successfully going to do that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Larry?
Yeah, in my experience, I think he lays out you lay out a fascinating scenario, and I do not deny that there is some sanity behind what you say, but I think it's also the law of unintended consequences, because in my experience, and so I'm going back now 40 years. I've never seen, with a lot of different disasters, I've never actually seen some intelligence behind the decisions. What I've seen more often is very short-sighted decision-making, things that are driven more by bureaucratic incentives. Now, can these people like Bezos and Gates and the others, the whole WEF, take advantage of this and turn it in the direction you're talking about? Absolutely. But I think the causes of this war, it was a war of choice by Trump, both in part to divert attention from Jeffrey Epstein, as well as to serve the needs of the Zionists.
That is the point, Larry, and I'm conscious you've only got 2 minutes left to answer it. This was a war of choice. The stock market is presumably going to open tomorrow morning plummeting like a stone. Indeed, the famous insiders are already betting on that. The $150 a barrel of oil is looking like a best-case scenario. Recession, which could become depression throughout not just Europe, but also the wider parts of Asia, looks certain now. If it's a war of choice, why did they choose that? Are they idiots?
Yeah, no, actually they are. They really thought that this would be a short war, that'd be 2-3 days, to decapitate, the Iranians would implode. They believed their own press clippings. They were running their own propaganda campaign, and they convinced themselves that the Iranian people would rise up to overthrow the mullahs instead of recognizing that we created the exact opposite effect. We created a unity among the people of Iran that they haven't experienced since Iraq attacked it back in 1980.
It's a fact. Larry Johnson, as always, a tour de force. And thanks very much for joining us on such a busy night for you. I know you have another commitment in precisely 30 seconds' time. So I'm very grateful to you. Larry Johnson, veteran of the CIA and State Department's Office of Counter-Terrorism and the founder of the respected Berg Associates. I'm going to be taking your calls now for the rest of the show. RB is first in Canada on Iran. RB, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, George. I hope you're doing well, and that was a great interview with Larry Johnson. He's a wealth of information.
Yeah, he is. Thank you very much. I'm doing well.
I'm doing well, too. I'm here in Canada watching this craziness going on. And from what I understand...
You must be glad that, RB, you must be glad that Anschluss that Donald Trump promised you when he said he was going to take you over. You must be pretty glad that never happened.
Well, I guess the truth is, George, and you know it, that Canada's always been a resource colony for the Anglo-American Empire, so we wouldn't notice any difference, except perhaps our vaunted universal health care system would be under threat, and we might have to all go bankrupt again if we get sick. But aside from that, what I'm looking at and what seems to me is this is all a project of the Greater Israel agenda. But I think, as Robert Burns, he said, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And this idea that Netanyahu had that he would use this to create his Greater Israel project and become a world superpower, not just a regional superpower, is blowing up in their face. I don't think they expected what was coming. Sure. I thought they thought Hezbollah was already, was too weak to fight back. They thought they could blow up, decapitate the Iranian leadership, and they would just walk in. Everything's rebounding back on them, and I don't think this is going to end up in being the lesser Israel project. Please expand on that, because I think that's where this is going.
Well, I agree with you, and I've said so here many times. Israel has neither the people nor the enduring soft power, or even that much hard power to achieve their domination from the Nile to the Euphrates. They'd dearly like to, but they're not capable of. Their people are fleeing to Greece, to Cyprus, 300,000 to Argentina, hundreds of thousands back to their countries of actual origin. They don't have the hard power. They are still unable to defeat the Palestinian resistance in the Gaza Strip, and they are, as you just put it, getting a bloody good hiding in the south of Lebanon right now. Their loss of troops, their loss of tanks and other material means that they have no possibility of subjugating even the southern part of Lebanon, never mind taking over the entire Middle East right into Iraq. Now it's time to give a very warm word of appreciation for some of tonight's most donors who've been onto the website supporting the show. Ben Clements, Mudaffar Rahmani, Anthony Vane, William Paul, and Munira Ladhani. A big thanks to each and every one of you, and each and every one of you who will not leave this evening, I know, without leaving your contribution. You just go to moats.tv. You select the Donate Now button and you contribute whatever you can manage in any currency. Every donation helps and keeps the show strong and independent, which is a very important quality. Let's stay in Canada, where Boris, I hope it's not that Boris, is in Toronto. Boris, welcome.
Well,
That's words I've never said before.
Thanks for. Thank you so much, George. From my heart, I want to say how much you are appreciated for the wisdom that you have and your global perspective. I want to raise one point. Why is it different that the Iranians can not put a toll on boats leaving the Strait of Hormuz? How is that different from Donald Trump's ridiculous tariff program on the world?
Well, I mean, it's not different. At least, thank you very much for your kind words, Boris. But the fact that they haven't put a toll on traffic through the Straits of Hormuz was something that I had a eureka moment whenever I heard it. Why haven't they done this before? They're having to clean up the environmental depredation. They're having to keep the straits clear of pirates and the like. And although Iran is not poor, it does have a vast population to feed. And Oman, after the British stole the United Arab Emirates off them, is not the richest at all of the Gulf countries, and is indeed, other than Yemen, at the poorer end of the scale. So as the straits are owned by Oman and Iran jointly, it seems to me a statement of the bleeding obvious that you are going to charge 2 million in Chinese currency as courtesy for using their waters. After all, if what's coming through these waters is so damn valuable to us, why would we balk at paying a paltry sum as a toll, which would presumably be partly fed back into services that are given to ensure safe passage and the rest. And it's a bit rich, the Americans complaining about a protection racket because they invented them. Boris in Toronto, thank you very much. Now I can also take comments. Scan the QR code now, leave a comment, and if it's clean, I'll read it out. Clifton Ellis sends £10, British pounds at that. Thank you, Clifton. Happy Easter, Sir Galloway. Keep up the wonderful work. May our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ bless your family. Thank you very much indeed, Clifton, for that. Nizam M, 4908, sends $4 American. Thank you very much. Thanks for your contribution to humanity. You are a sir to many of us. No need for any kings or queens to tell us so. Thank you, Sir George. Thank you, Nizam. Very kind words indeed. Marcom says, hello, George. As you know, first the Badinter Commission in 1991 by destroying Yugoslavia, and then NATO in 1995 by attacking Republika Srpska, and 1999 by attacking Yugoslavia, killed international law. You're absolutely correct, and moreover, Marcom, I said so at the time, in Parliament and on the streets, in print and on television. I said that by murdering international law in 1999, by the destruction of Yugoslavia without lawful authority, indeed in defiance of international law, you were not just destroying something beautiful and great, namely the Republic of Yugoslavia, you were opening the way to a whole series of Yugoslavias. You were granting to big powers what they called the right to protect. They later changed it because they thought an assertion of an illegal right was a step too far. The responsibility to protect. They took upon themselves, having failed to persuade the lawful authorities in the United Nations, that they had the right to intervene on the Kosovo question, which they, in part, had fueled in the first place. And they invaded Yugoslavia. I was recently looking at the bomb damage, which is still there. Call it damage, devastation. The Chinese embassy was bombed. The Serbian TV was bombed. Tea ladies were killed. Makeup ladies were killed. Buildings of all kinds were destroyed by NATO bombardment, all without any lawful authority at all. And trains were attacked. Civilians were murdered, thousands of them. And then they added insult to injury by again giving themselves the right to recognize a breakaway part of somebody else's country, something that they are then forced to refuse to do in the case of the Basque country, in the case of Catalonia, in the case of many parts of the world, where people want to break away from the state that they are in, and the Western countries that facilitated the severance, the dismemberment of Serbia by this recognition of the breakaway of Kosovo, they are forced to justify one but deny the other, leaving international law a complete farce. Although farce sounds too nice a word. M.J. Kestrel says that monologue should be in the Tate Gallery. What an artist Gigi is. Thank you for that. Finton Coyle, 3311, says, George, can you cover the scandalous situation in Cuba, please? Well, indeed, we will be looking at just that, war events permitting, in the next show, where one of the great heroes of the recent siege-breaking convoy to Cuba will be joining us. Terry is in Alabama, wants to talk about Trump's use of language. Terry, did it shock the burghers in Alabama?
Well, hey, George. Unfortunately, not too much, I don't think, and that's the point I wanted to make. In the United States, and I'm 62 years old, and fortunately I've never had this issue in my personal life, but in the United States, I don't know how it is in Britain, foul language, profane language is basically a systemic problem from the highest levels to the lowest levels throughout our society. So I don't know why anybody would really be too shocked at the way Trump speaks. It's just part of the warp and woof of our society these days. And I've heard guests, some of the ones who appear on your show or on the judge's show or other places, multiple times use God's name in vain during interviews, which is a lot worse than what Trump said. So, I mean, there's a little bit of hypocrisy going on here. I think it's just, I know Trump is president, and I don't care for him or Biden or any of them really, but the language itself, I mean, it's just part of society. On the air, politicians, entertainment, and so, I mean, there you go. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Well, of course, I recognize the force of what you say, but I think there are special characteristics involved in this particular episode. Most of us swear. We're aware that we should not. Most of us wouldn't swear in front of our mother, especially mine. She's 92 or 93 years old. So I wouldn't swear in front of my mother. I never swore in front of my late father. You wouldn't swear in front of your retired school teacher if you met her at an event. You might swear with your mates in private, but you probably wouldn't do so on a platform that you know is going to be read by not hundreds of millions, but billions of people. You probably wouldn't. Even I thought twice of doing it when I was only quoting him in my opening to the show. You probably wouldn't swear on Easter Sunday when you would realize that the offense meter would be very much greater. Easter Sunday is the holiest day of the year, not for him because he's, talking of hypocrites, the world's biggest hypocrite. He has not a scintilla of religious belief, and never in his whole life has he ever pretended to. This is a very recent affectation. Yesterday he said, "Glory be to God," whilst threatening death and destruction on others of God's creation. Today, on Easter Sunday, when we mark the resurrection of the Lord, the holiest day in Christendom, he didn't thank God, he thanked Allah. Praise be to Allah, he said. Now, it didn't offend me, because I know that Allah is merely the Arabic word for God, but it must have offended, or at least impacted, on these tens of millions of idiot savants in the American evangelical movement. Allah, praise be to Allah, on Easter Sunday. And then, of course, there's the small matter that in the same communique, in the same message on Easter Sunday, he threatened not just death and destruction, but clearly delineated war crimes. He threatened to commit them, promised to commit them. So, for all those reasons and more, I think this is a special case. I'm amazed that, especially if I may, down in Alabama, that you don't think it's more offensive than it appears to me from the mean streets of Glasgow. But Terry, every point of view is valuable. Let me take a quick break. Much more of your calls coming up. Stay tuned. My grandson Sean, who's answering the phones tonight, had his first 1 million view tweet about Gaza, and I predict great things from him. So we're not going to go away. We believe in the next life. We believe that we will all be judged on what we did in this life, and that will determine our fate. And so we face whatever we have to face, if not with equanimity. Can't say that the experience was one that one can feel sanguine about. It was genuinely horrific, and I'll never forget it. It was the more horrific for being unexpected by me. I never believed that someone like me, of my age, and with my background and with my position in British politics, would ever be told that I was being held under the Terrorism Act. I'm not unmoved by it, but I'm certainly undeterred by it.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
"50,000 people have now voted on the poll. Have Trump and Netanyahu killed international law?" It's no contest. Yes, 97, 94, 96, 94. By the way, X is seeking to rig our polls by the simple device of not showing them to any of my followers, at least not any appreciable proportion of them. I have almost 1 million followers on Twitter, on X, and Mr. Musk is allowing our polls to be seen by 1% of my almost 1 million followers. But it's not working, Mr. Musk. If the purpose is to skew the polls, well, on X, 94% replied that Trump and Netanyahu have killed international law. So this poll is only of value now in quantum. So let's make it the biggest ever poll. And we're in reach of that. Ahmed is in London on the Gulf nations. Ahmed, welcome.
George, thank you very much for the chance to speak on your show. It's a fantastic show, and we respect and appreciate you a lot, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to quickly touch on a point that you may have potentially covered in one of your previous shows, and that was where the Gulf nations, following the result of this conflict, will become underneath the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And in the recent weeks, my mentor, actually, who personally advises or used to advise the founder of the UAE, actually corroborated this. But I just wanted to know if you could, mention or shed a bit more light on your opinions on the future of the Gulf nations following this conflict, and how that could look like for Saudi Arabia. Are they the vultures that are in this conflict?
Well, it's a very good question and a very big one, and I'm glad you asked it. I have to give you my dispassionate opinion, shorn of any feelings I may have for this or that Gulf state. Obviously, I like some of them better than I like others, but I shall try to keep that out of the reply I'm going to give you. There is... I mentioned earlier that Oman was left impoverished by the British theft of what became the UAE from it. Oman has oil, but not that much, but it would have had a lot of oil if it hadn't had the UAE carved out of its territory. So that was the first of many thefts. And we're not talking ancient history there for people who are zoning out, thinking I'm about to go back to the Ottoman period. No, this was when Peter Osgood was banging the goals in for Chelsea. This was when Tommy James and the Shondells were at the top of the charts. Oman was robbed of a state which was artificially then created by the British, called the UAE. Now, the leader of the UAE was a friend of mine, and I respected and loved him very much. Last time I was there, I went to visit his grave in the Sheikh Zayed Mosque. I wear the watch that he gave me so many watches, I had to ask him to stop, because every time he gave me a watch, I had to register it in the Parliamentary Register of Interests, and it was becoming embarrassing. So I loved Sheikh Zayed, and I thought he was a very wise ruler. But that doesn't change the fact that Oman and the UAE should have been and were once, until modern times, a single state. As it happens, Saudi Arabia believes both Oman and the UAE rightfully belong to them. Saudi Arabia believes that the carving up of the region was an imperialist plot by Sykes and Picot in 1916, and then every decade since. And they're right about that. You say nations, but they're not actually nations. There is no national difference between the peoples of the different states that imperialism created. They are Arabs. They are Arabs from the Persian Gulf area. They have characteristics. Of course, some like this food, some like that food, but they are essentially the same people. And the purpose of creating these states was not for the benefit of the people in those states, but the better to divide and rule them. The better to divide and rule and plunder them, which is precisely what we then did. Now, some wasted that small part of their national wealth that they were permitted to retain, and some, like Sheikh Zayed, invested wisely and made a country that was, in many regards, a success. But that doesn't change the fact that the carve-up of the Gulf was for selfish imperialistic reasons, mainly by British. At the same time as Tommy James was top of the charts and Peter Osgood was dazzling them at Stamford Bridge, Britain carved another country called Bahrain out of Iran. Bahrain was a part of Iran until 1971. And its people have far more in common, including religion or sect, with Iran than they do with Saudi Arabia, although Saudi Arabia itself has a substantial Shiite minority in the eastern province, which just so happens to be the area where the oil is. So, me, as someone with no axe to grind for any of them, favor unity. I favor unity and representative government. Government that will govern the economy and the resources and the people in the interests of the people, not in the interests of the ruling family, not in the interests of the investment houses in Wall Street or the casinos in London or all the many other things that the wealth of the area was given. Now, none of these countries like me. I don't go there any longer. I won't be going there any longer. I don't believe I'd be safe to go there any longer. So nothing that I'm about to say should be misinterpreted. But I have to say that when you, I was going to say lease, when you give your land, especially in the land of the two holy mosques, when you give your land to the godless freak Donald Trump, and when you allow that land to be used to destroy Muslims and their property and their inheritance, Isfahan is an inheritance precious beyond measure. When you are allowing the godless freak Donald Trump to destroy Muslim lands from your land, as they incontestably are and have been doing throughout, despite weasel words to the contrary, you don't have much of a claim to anybody's tender heart if you just have to live with what happens next. And here's what I think will happen next. If there is an American invasion of Iran, there'll be an Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. And the Kuwaiti king has already flown the coop, as he did when Saddam entered Kuwait. He will do again when people who hated Saddam but are Iraqis and decide to reclaim Kuwait because the British took Kuwait from them. My late and great parliamentary friend, Tam Dalyell, his father-in-law was in the tent when the British resident, Sir Percy Cox, tiring of the bargaining, took a stick and drew a line literally in the sand and said, "This is Kuwait and this is Iraq." Kuwait was a wilayat of Iraq, and it will become so again. if the Americans invade Iran. The Iranians will take back Bahrain. The Saudis may have trouble in their eastern province. Maps will be being redrawn all over the place. And you can see the shape of it in the change of course of Qatar. Qatar and its television mouthpiece, Al Jazeera, was spitting hatred at Iran only 2 weeks ago. And fire was being exchanged between Qatar and Iran. But wiser counsel has prevailed. Qatar has looked at the map and realized it will be the neighbor of Iran forevermore. And the Iran is not going anywhere. And neither is its political system going anywhere. There will be no regime change in Iran, Qatar has concluded. And therefore, the Qatar royal family, who have always been smarter than the others, at least since the death of Sheikh Zayed, have decided to make peace with Iran. And I predict a peaceful future between them. Oman, my favorite Arab country, has peace with Iran, despite false flag operations trying to turn the two countries against each other. So I predict that Oman and Qatar will have a good and sacrosanct relationship with Iran after this is all over. But one thing is clear, and you might not like it, Ahmed. Iran is now the top dog in West Asia. And that status as the top dog will profoundly affect the course of world events long after I'm gone. Now look, you can download the Moats podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. And you can listen to the weekly podcast via the moats.tv website when you go there to leave your donation. Once you've listened, please leave a review, rate it. It helps us grow. Today we are ranking in the top 10 for politics in Liberia, Uganda, Bulgaria, and Egypt. And we're in the top 30 for politics in Spain, Qatar, Chile, and Malaysia. That's a lot of countries, a lot of exotic places, but there's none more exotic than the next caller, the legend Donna in Panama. Oh, Donna, we miss you so much. Give us Colonel Wilkerson's hypothesis, as I know you want to.
Well, I miss you all too, and I wonder, is there anything that we might do that, I'm not asking for guarantees, but might help get an apology from His Majesty's government of your treatment, your and Gayatri's treatment at the airport? Like, how about a letter to King Charles, or a letter to Camilla, a letter to Keir Starmer, or whoever his successor might be? Would any of that help, or a letter to the editor of one of the newspapers?
Well, it's a beautiful it's a beautiful thought, Donna, and characteristic of you to think of it. But my estimation is that I will be in what is self-imposed exile until after Starmer is gone, because this was a political operation. The police were misused, as is now happening everywhere. My good friend Hazaldin, the chairman of the American Communist Party, a man as pure as the driven snow, has just discovered that he is under FBI investigation. My deputy leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, distinguished parliamentarian Chris Williamson, has been hunted out of his studio for his television program, Palestine Declassified. And moreover, it's clear that a state and police operation is in preparation against him and that show. They want to close it down. And I cannot risk this show being closed down. He's risking it because he's broadcasting from England, from a studio in England. I am not. And tomorrow I'll be in Moscow. I'll definitely be safe to broadcast there. I'm going for the Moscow Economic Forum. There'll be capitalists there from all over the world, but none from Britain, because the British peculiar and ancient hatred of Russia is what lies beneath Starmer's hatred of the mother of all talk shows. So until the political situation changes, we will continue to live in exile. It's no hardship, to be honest. Where we are living is far, far, I'm sorry to say, far more prosperous than our own country is, and the weather is a lot better too. So I'm not asking for anyone's sympathy. Obviously, I would prefer to be on the streets of England right now as we come to polling day in just a few weeks' time. Obviously, I wish I could see my house again, my gardens again. I wish I could see, and the children wish they could see their cats again. But we are all together now. Our whole household is complete. I'm haunted by the age of my mother, what will happen, where, God forbid, anything to happen to her. There are worries involved, but I'm not going to place myself in an arrestable situation again. I think you know, Donna, the toll it took on my health to be confronted by armed police officers and be told I was being held under the Terrorism Act. Me, under the Terrorism Act. And then to discover, only at the end of the interrogation, 4 hours interrogation by armed officers, that my good wife had been held for 5 hours by armed police officers, questioning about the Palestinian colors in her fingernail. And I told the police officer there and then, you just caused my removal from the country because my wife didn't even want to be here. She's only here because of me. She's only in this country because of me and our 3 British children. But she's not going to live in a country where armed policemen are going to hold her for 5 hours and interrogate her in such an infantile way, on such absurd pretexts. So she will leave, and if she leaves, my kids have to leave, and if my wife and kids have to leave, so do I have to leave. And I sought assurances, informally and formally, that the same thing would not happen to me again, but assurances came there none. So whilst it's a beautiful thought that you had, I think just wish us the best in our exile and a speedy end to the premiership of Sir Keir Starmer. Thank you, Donna. Now tell us, how is the US-Iran situation looking to you in Panama?
What I wanted to say, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Donna. Yeah, the world's listening.
Okay, it was, I checked it, and it was actually the Chris Hedges interviewing Colonel Wilkerson, but both of them are dear friends of mine. Well, anyway, Colonel Wilkerson said one of the motives for this war, it's very little discussed, he said, is that China, now there's a word that you will probably know, George, that I don't know. I've heard of the China Belt and Road Initiative, but he was saying a word I could not hear. I think it sounded like Space Road Initiative, but it's the trade routes. Essentially, Here it is. I wrote it down. It mirrors Alexander the Great's route, and it's the Persian Gulf, going through. Let's see, the Persian Gulf, and then ultimately it will go through Iran, and they will be able, like now, Chinese goods take, for the route that they currently have, it takes 2 to 3 days approximately, okay? They will be able, if they get this Persian Gulf, through the Caucasus to Europe, okay, if they get that, the Chinese manage to get that, right, it will take only 16 hours. So obviously there's lots and lots of money to be made, and convenience also to get this. And he said it mirrors Alexander the Great's route. Persian Gulf to the Caucasus to Europe. So he thinks that is one of the motives for the war.
It is. It is. And I wholly endorse that thesis. The centrality of Iran to the new emerging world order, where Russia, China, and Iran, and economically speaking, not politically, India, the emergence as an economic superpower of India, the emergence of a superpower in Iran, and heaven knows we're seeing that displayed every single hour of every day now in this war of Iran, the defeat by Russia of 27 NATO countries who've been waging war against Russia ever since the 2014 outbreak of coup d'etat and war in the Ukraine, the vaulting superiority that has to be seen to be believed of the People's Republic of China. I mean, now that you can go there visa-free, you'd be mad if you could do it, not to go to China. And if you go to China, I guarantee you that your jaw will drop open at what you see there. So this new world order, based on the BRICS, with the Belt and Road Initiative and this connectivity that you described, that Pepe Escobar very often talks about, this leaves Europe as a backwater. It leaves the United States as a backwater. And they're determined to stop it. They were determined to put a puppet regime in control of Iran, like the puppet regimes they have, or rather had, on the Arabian side of the Gulf. But they have spectacularly failed. The tables have turned, and I don't believe they're going to turn back again. Donna, thank you for that great call. Hadi is in Maryland, who has a reply to Terry in Alabama's call. Hadi, welcome.
Hi, George.
Hi, go ahead, quickly.
Yes, just responding to Terry from Alabama. I'm somewhat almost offended by what Terry said about our.
You need to turn your radio down or TV down, because that's what's putting you off the time lag.
Trump's using proclivities.
Hadi, we'll need to come back to you, because the hour is late and a lot of people want to get on, and you're pausing every time you hear yourself, coming back to yourself. Comments. Phil Chen says, tricky poll question. I think international law has been dead for at least 2 decades. I argue more. I'm with the Yugoslavia point. Sean Bebbington says there was no international law to begin with. He's even more pessimistic than me. Stuart Seaton says, what international law stopped the Gaza genocide, the Iraq genocide? Good point. Neil GZ sends £5 Thanks, Neil. Trump and Netanyahu didn't kill international law. They hit the final nail in its coffin. Happy Easter. And CFC LOL, LOL, Mr. Galloway, sir, the US does not commit war crimes. It defines what a war crime is, funds the court that enforces it, and declines to join that court. This is the rules-based international order. That's a terrific comment indeed. It's really Alice through the looking glass. Words mean exactly what I think that they mean. Heather is in Alabama. My goodness, we're big in Alabama tonight. Heather wants to talk about Iran's Lego videos, which are amazing if you haven't seen them. Heather, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Very clear. Go ahead.
Oh, very good. I would like to say here in Alabama in the United States, the southern United States, that the Lego videos that are reaching to liberating the Native Americans, the African Americans, all the Epstein Island victims, they're making a great hit. And I think they're doing a lot. I know it's war propaganda from Iran, but I think it's making a really good statement here in at least in my opinion, in the south of the United States.
Well, that's a very important testimony, Heather. It is war propaganda, but their war propaganda is a lot better than the U.S. war propaganda. The U.S. and Israel are literally defenseless when it comes to the meme war and when it comes to the social media war. That's why they're so desperate to clamp down on social media, because you can't defend the indefensible. If it's indefensible, you can't defend it. And what Trump has done is indefensible. And no creative person is going to shame themselves and cheapen their art by putting pen to paper or whatever you say in the digital age by defending it. And therefore the field is open. And another of the extents to which they have underestimated Iran, they never saw this coming. They thought the Iranians were primitive people. They didn't realize that the Iranians were creating the finest works of art ever seen on the planet 5,000-6,000 years ago. The Iranians are amongst the world's greatest filmmakers. Anyone who knows film already knew that, but Donald Trump doesn't know film. He doesn't know art or literature. He's never read a book, never written a book. You've never seen him with a book. You've never heard him quote from a book. He is a semi-literate individual, a huckster. And the Iranians are not. And so the Iranian social media performance in this war, drawing rounds of applause, and now they've got all the Iranian embassies around the world are competing with each other for the best memes, including the Lego videos, which are hilarious, brilliant, on point, and beating the pants off the American competition. Thanks, Heather. The reason I said what I said about Alabama and why I was surprised about Terry, I imagined that places like Alabama and in the south of the United States were rather more decorous, rather more felicitous, rather more careful about taking the Lord's name in vain, about cursing and swearing, especially on Easter Sunday, in public, on your phone, to billions of people. I thought that would have gone down more badly in the south, the deep south of the United States. But maybe I need to wise up. Maybe the South ain't what it used to be. Social media roundup. I'm closing the poll now. We didn't get to the record, but we did get to 55,000 votes cast. And 97, 94, 96, 94 was the final tally. That's a big opinion poll, you know, and that margin is truly phenomenal. Now, as we continue to recognize more of the people who make this program possible, the support we receive is what keeps Moats going strong and independent. So a big thanks tonight to Juan Zurita, Hussein Darwich, Christopher Conway, our old friend George J. Ashkar Jr., and Dan Raj. A big thanks to these, our biggest donors this evening, but to every one of you who has or is going to donate by the end of the night. If you want to get involved, just go to moats.tv and press the Donate Now button. Mahmoud is in Canada on Iran and Palestine. Mahmoud, welcome.
Thank you so much, George. Happy Easter to you, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you and your viewers a testimony in a first-hand incident from the past. We're going back around the time where at the onset of the Iranian Revolution, when the Iranian Shah was ousted and Ayatollah Khomeini rose to power, I happened to be present at a rally in support of the revolution. And I was way too young at the time to understand the complexity of world politics. However, one phrase, George, that the crowd was chanting at the time, repeatedly in Persian, and by the way, I don't speak Persian, the phrase was, Amruz Iran, Farda Palestine. And translated in English, it meant, today Iran, tomorrow Palestine. It's just phenomenal how they stayed so true to the cause, George, over the years. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
It truly is, and thank you. It truly is phenomenal and unique. They are, for 47 years, the only people on the earth who have consistently done everything that they possibly could to come to the rescue and work for the liberation of the Palestinian people. And they have done it with hardware. They have done it with software. They have done it with their hearts. They have done it with their money. And no other country in the whole world can say that they have done the same. No one can say that they have done all that they could do, even if that in many cases would have been little, but they didn't even do the little. And just this evening, I think the Iranians put one of the captured pilots on TV, and the spokesperson of the Islamic Republic said, we will exchange him for 10,000 freed Palestinian prisoners. They feel deeply in their heart their fidelity to the Palestinian cause. And it's one of the reasons why so many people in the world are rooting for them. Imad is in Manchester, and he wants to talk about Donald Trump, and he's got a point. Go ahead, Imad.
Hi, good evening. Big fan of you, George. I just want to say it feels like a bullfight, and Iran is a smart matador, well trained, and the bull is Trump. And with apology to all bulls, actually. He's unhinged, and someone must remove him from power. And I think the best is the American peoples and maybe the U.S. Army, but he should not be staying in power because he's destroying not only Iran and the Middle East, but he's destroying his own country, the U.S. He's accelerating its degradation. I mean, it's already on path of losing the status of being an empire, but he's accelerating that in a way that is damaging the lives of people, even in the U.S. So that's my...
Well, amen to that, Imad. I've been saying that I'm waiting for the flap of white coats as the psychiatrists come to take him away to the funny farm, or the march of military boots as the top brass of the military place him under arrest. It seems we cannot depend on either of those outcomes. It seems that Trump has so filled his cabinet with chinless, boneless, spineless wonders that no possibility of them invoking the 25th Amendment, whereby they could legally remove him from power, is likely to happen. We heard earlier that the next president, J.D. Vance, is suffering from more or less a clinical depression. So we're not likely to find relief from that perspective. And therefore, I think the markets and the oil price are going to have to drive everyone to such despair that the entire world rises up against him and the American position becomes unsustainable. One thing I'm sure of is that the Iranians will never stop fighting. They have beaten far smarter invaders than Donald Trump. Donald Trump ain't no Alexander the Great, and they have sustained their civilization for millennia, and they're not going to give it up to this cheap huckster, Donald Trump. Some more comments. Knowledge is power. Not buying the latest message from Trump. When did you last hear him swear in one of his posts? My bet is on Hog's Breath posting that in Trump's name. Is Trump still breathing? That is a very good question. And the Bashish Day 1184, he's not the Messiah, he's just a naughty boy and a moron to boot. And Abahia 2614, Trump is the comical Ali. And RCW 3009 says Trump just accepted Adelson money to stay out of jail. Now he's going to jail. They win everything. Trump gets nothing. And Harley Yellowstone says the founding fathers would vomit if they could see America today. Last call, I suppose, though we might squeeze one more in. Harnan in Amsterdam. Harnan, welcome to the show.
Yes, great being with your show. It's I'm really hopeful to see what your story is, and I hope we can get this story further. And I think we have this orange barbarian in the United States. It's a total disaster, and what can we do in cooperation to get the American people so far that they say, he has to be removed. And this is a kind of ideological warfare in which I think Iran has a kind of lead, a moral lead, because they're defending themselves, they're defending their culture. And I thought maybe we should build a coalition of the countries and NGOs and media companies who work together and to isolate this Trump regime together with Netanyahu. And that they have so big a moral losing game what they are playing, that the pressure gets so big that they have to stop these atrocities because it's so horrible. It has to stop as soon as possible. And how can we cooperate to make this happen?
Well, I think I think that's a very powerful call. If that is indeed the final call, no Gayatri tonight. She's taking the children back to school. But the situation is catastrophic, first of all, for the Iranian people. And in all our exaltation about the bloody good hiding Israel and the United States are receiving, we should not forget the level of suffering of the Iranian people with their blood and their treasure is immense. The fact that they will bear it and that they will never surrender to it is of some compensation, but not to the individual mother and father that lose their child, or the individual child that loses their parents, their siblings. So it's right that you sober us up by inference to that. The problem is that your country and mine, the Netherlands and the UK, are pretending to be against this war, but actually doing nothing to stop it. In the case of the Netherlands, although your least finest son, the Runt, former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, now General Secretary of NATO, is practically the only significant figure, if he is significant, in the whole world who is openly backing Trump. The Dutchman, Mark Rutte, a childless freak, is ready to see other people's children slaughtered in order to keep his job in a NATO which is fast disappearing from any kind of relevance or validity. But the United Kingdom is fully participating in the war. It is a complete lie that Keir Starmer is not in this war. He is deeply up to his neck in the blood of the Iranian people. The Americans have fallen out of love with Donald Trump, bigly. He lost for the first time ever his majority support amongst white working class voters. His bedrock, his blue-collar bedrock. Yesterday, for the first time, he was in negative approval territory. In every other demographic, he is increasingly reviled. He has no chance. Remember, it's only a few months ago, he was threatening to run again, unconstitutionally. He ain't threatening that now. Nobody in their right mind is suggesting 4 more years for Donald Trump. He'll be lucky to reach the end of this term, never mind get elected to another one. You remember all the speculation about Donald Trump Jr., about Ivanka Trump, even about Kushner. There'll be no more Trumps in the White House. They'll be lucky to stay out of the jailhouse. Their dynasty that they hoped to found is now dead and buried. And so the American people have already voted with their feet against Donald Trump. The problem is the Republican Party in the Congress that continues to cling to his coattails. Now, it might be that before November, they decide those coattails weren't at all worth clinging on to any longer. So a week's a long time in politics. November is therefore a lot of weeks, and we'll see how it goes. But in November, there's more chance of me being elected President of the United States than Donald Trump's party holding on to power in the United States Congress. Final call is another legend. It's Sarkar in Glasgow. On you go, Sarkar.
Good evening, George. Thank you so much. George, first of all, full glory to the Iranian bravery. But today I want to talk about a very coward nation and a coward man, Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu. This war was never America's war. Trump was one of the biggest stupids to put his nose into it, and now he's neck deep in corruption and in this war and the killing of his own soldiers. If Israel are so brave and they want to fight the Iranians, why don't they put their boots on the ground? Oh, no, wait. Their bravery is fighting people with Palestine who've got bricks in their hands. Their bravery is bombing a small strip of land called Gaza, where people cannot fight back. For all the talk of the idea of bravery, it was their war. They are the ones who instigated it. If you're brave enough, go there, put your boots on the ground. Why should somebody else's father, why should somebody else's husband, brother, son come back in a body bag? When is it finally high time, George? You think Americans should say enough of the blind support to Israel? I'd like to hear your views, George.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to do so. The American people have decisively moved against Israel. Israel has overreached itself, and it will never be glad, confident morning for them again. The Israel lobby in the United States is now a busted flush. They are hoping for a period of quiet whereby through other means than AIPAC, which is now toxic, anyone running for election in November as the AIPAC candidate is a guaranteed loser, however many millions they are given. So the Israel lobby is a busted flush in the United States. American Jews, young American Jews, have decisively turned against them. And everybody else, everybody, Republican and Democrat, is now against them. People ultimately realize when they've been had. And boy, have the American people been had. So the final reverberations about all this will be felt for years, maybe decades, will influence politics in Britain and in the United States and elsewhere in the world for decades after this. They committed a crime, but it was worse than a crime. It was a blunder of unimaginable proportions, of earth-shaking consequence. And it will shape the rest of my life, your life, and the life of the youngest person watching the Mother of All talk shows this evening. That's it, I'm afraid. We'll be back, Gayatri and me, on Wednesday with the midweek Mother of All talk shows. God knows what world we'll be looking at if Trump carries out his blood-curdling threats. We might even be looking at a post-nuclear war. So, join me Wednesday night, 7 p.m. UK. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.